Never Let Me Go is a 2005 novel written by Japanese-born British author Kazuo Ishiguro, famous for his acclaimed book The Remains of the Day, based on which a film adaptation was made in 1993 starring Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson. Never Let Me Go is a three-act story about three friends, Kathy, who is also the narrator, Ruth, and Tommy, and follows their lives from childhood through adulthood. The first act is set at Hailsham, a school in the midst of British countryside where Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy spend their childhood and teenage years until they turn 18. The students of Hailsham look normal enough, but a tragic destiny awaits them. They are in fact donors, that is, clones, and their only function in society is to have their organs harvested for transplants. As can be gathered from the remarks of some characters, thanks to this system, life expectancy has now exceeded 100 years, and the majority of the diseases that once affected humanity has been eradicated. Quality of life is so high that it would be impossible, or rather unbearable, to renounce the donation system, even though the public is well aware of what happens to the donors, whose short lives usually come to an abrupt end before they even turn 30. For them there is no hope of ever escaping their arranged fate. Since childhood they are indoctrinated so that they passively accept their condition. They are led to believe they are different from the rest of the world, namely, from real people, a category to which they do not belong. To believe they are mere tools subordinated to the needs of society. To believe in the ultimate purpose they must fulfill for the greater good. This subtle conditioning process is carried out also and above all through the language to which the donors are exposed. The word donor itself implies willingness from the subject, while in reality clones have no choice as for their fate. Similarly, false transplants are called donations, and death, which inevitably occurs after 3 or 4 transplants, is dubbed completion, a term that is clearly reminiscent of industry. During the first act of the novel, the allusions to the real circumstances of the Hailsham students are intentionally vague. As readers, we realize that these kids are outcasts, pariahs, but we do not know exactly why that is. Just like Kathy herself, who has yet to fully comprehend the implications of her situation. And we are driven to wonder what the nature of these orphans' otherness might be, since they appear to be ordinary children. By setting the narration in today's England, a familiar, non-suspect backdrop, Ishiguro manages to increase the feeling of uneasiness that the treatment reserved to the orphans at Hailsham induces. For places in which to relegate people who were deemed an inconvenience have existed and still exist today. In this way, the dystopian world described by Ishiguro, although it will turn out to be distant from our own, feels extremely real. In the book, the ambiguity with which this alternative reality is presented to the reader is pivotal to the narration. The reader is conditioned from the beginning to embrace, in the same way as the main trio, the rest of the Hailsham kids and donors in general, this perverse state of affairs as normal. This normality as such cannot be subverted. The absence of rebellion of the donors derives from a passive acceptance of reality as it has been presented to them. They are persuaded their ordeal is simply part of the order of things. In the 2010 film adaptation of the same name, directed by Mark Romanek, there is no such ambiguity. The film opens with captions that immediately reassure the viewer the reality shown on screen is not ours, This apparently minor change actually constitutes the film's biggest departure from its source material. The film has neither the intention nor the skill to have the viewer accept the donor's circumstances. Furthermore, the donors themselves do not seem to be resigned to their fate as they are in the book. This is why the film needs to justify the compliance of the donors, who are thus forced to wear bracelets that work as tracking devices, constantly monitoring their position. Hence, their captivity is technological and not psychological, as in the book. Both in the novel and in the film, the Hailsham students are required to show their artistic capabilities by painting and sculpting. Madame, a mysterious woman who visits Hailsham once a year, collects the best works for her gallery. Only many years later will the main trio discover the real purpose of Madame's gallery and of Hailsham itself. After leaving Hailsham, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy get transferred to the cottages, farmhouses, where they live alongside other young donors. Ruth and Tommy are now a couple, but the deep love that has existed between Tommy and Kathy since they were children grows stronger every day. This causes a love triangle dynamic to arise. Donors only have two options. They can either start with their donations immediately, or they can become carers, whose job is to tend to the donors before becoming donors themselves. But during the trio's time at the cottages, a third option seems to appear. Rumor has it that if a couple manages to demonstrate they are in love, they can receive a deferral on their donations. But what is love, and how can you prove it? The characters, as well as the reader's viewers, are left musing over such questions as the story unfolds. The third act is set several years after the end of the trio's stay at the cottages. After a long period of separation, the paths of Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy cross again. Kathy is now a carer, while Tommy and Ruth are already donors. Ruth feels she is close to completion and apologizes to her friend for keeping her away from Tommy. Even though Ruth had always known in her heart Kathy and Tommy were made for each other. Before dying, Ruth gives Kathy Madame's address, so that Kathy can ask for help to get Tommy a deferral. Kathy and Tommy go to see Madame. They explain to her they are deeply in love and even show her Tommy's drawings. But a bitter disappointment awaits them. There are no such things as deferrals. Their destiny cannot be postponed, let alone changed. Madame explains that Hailsham was part of an experiment aimed at demonstrating through art that clones have a soul as well. But even if the experiment had been successful, no one wanted to give up donations, and so the school was closed. The story ends with Tommy's death, and with a heartbroken but resigned Kathy, who, after a brief reflection, drives away towards what will be her destiny as well. In the film, Kathy draws a touching parallel between the fate of the donors and the human condition.
What I'm not sure about is if our lives have been so different from the lives of the people we save. We all complete. Maybe none of us really understand what we've lived through, or feel we've had enough time.
Ishiguro himself stated that Never Let Me Go is essentially about accepting mortality, something we are all subject to and that we cannot escape. Just like the donors in Never Let Me Go, we know our time is short, and yet we live as though death will never touch us, and we weave bonds of love and friendship in spite of the common destiny that awaits us.